Welcome back into CBS Sports HQ. Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft. And why is this special? Well, because it is his first since the Combine, where he says, I try not to overreact to things like 40 or hand size, but without fail, that does creep in a little bit. That said, not a whole lot changing in his top 10 this week, including keeping Malik Willis, the first quarterback off the board, going to the Falcons at 8. Let's welcome in Ryan Wilson and Brady Quinn, both back from the Combine. It is good to have you back. Let's start with the first overall pick. And Ryan, you haven't moved from this in about a month. He has Ike Ekwonu going to the Jags. Brady, what do you think about that?
I love it because I don't know why you would move him at this point, Ryan. I mean, based on what we saw from him at the Combine, he tested, Evan Neal didn't. Evan Neal seems to be the other player that's in contention for it. He might even be the betting favorite right now, but I do think there's a thought amongst the league that Ekwonu might have the higher value there, especially at the left tackle spot. So if you are the Jacksonville Jaguars right now, you got a new head coach. Priority number one is maximizing the talent of obviously Trevor Lawrence, and you got to do it by protecting him. Too often he was pressured. He was on his back last year. Ekwonu gives you that help. Now they've got Walker Little there as well. The truth of the NFL offensive line group is they're just trying to get the best five out there. I mean, with playing 17 regular season games, you're going to have to play musical chairs from time to time. So there's no reason that you can't draft a bunch of really good offensive linemen and put them in spots to get your best five out there. Even if you have a guy that may have played tackle, that may have to play guard. Ekwonu might fall into that category. Some people think he might fit up and end up being a guard, but you can see the athleticism. You can see the way he moves fluidly for his size. The best thing that we're not even showing right now is just his run blocking ability. This dude is an absolute mauler. Now, he's got to continue to improve on his pass blocking sets and skills, but overall, he's going to be a solid player, potentially the best offensive lineman in this class. So it makes a lot of sense for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Number one overall for about a month. Let's go to number two overall. Ryan, you have the Lions taking Aiden Hutchinson. You got to talk to him at the Combine, and I was surprised by this, that he does have some haters out there saying that he has reached his ceiling. He is not fazed by that at all.
No, and I didn't mention names, but Pete Prisco wonders if he's reached his ceiling. So I asked him that, and he said that's the dumbest question he's ever been asked. And he said, I'm 21 years old, and I'm only going to get better. So I agree with him. And, when you sit next to someone who's 6'6", 275, or 265 and runs a 4.75 40, you tend to agree with whatever they tell you. But look, he has been, for the longest time, for the last month or so, my first player off the board. He's my favorite player in this draft. And I think if the Jaguars didn't need offensive line, they would take Aiden Hutchinson first overall. He has been absolutely dynamic throughout the course of the season. And look, here's the thing. You can point to that last game in the semifinals where he struggled, quote unquote. But, every other game he showed up. You can see games where J.J. Watt struggled, where T.J. Watt struggled, where Myles Garrett has struggled. I'm not concerned about him at the next level, and I don't think he's reached his ceiling because, as he's noted, he's only 21. 2019, the leaps he made from 2019 to 2020, and then from 2020 to 2021 have been exceeded everyone's expectations. He's a top 5 talent all day long, and I expect, while he is obviously the safest pick in this draft class, he will be immeasurably better 2, 3, 4 years from now than when I talked to him at the Combine last week.
Always fun calling out Pete Prisco there. Let's go to number 3 overall. Ryan has the Texans, taking Alabama offensive tackle Evan Neal here. We saw a little graphic a while ago. He is the favorite to go number 1. Yeah. So what do you think about him falling to the Texans at 3?
I don't know if it's falling. It's number 3
overall.
What I mean,
yes.
But no, here's the thing. He didn't compete at the Combine, and I do think that might have been a little bit disservice only because he would have performed so well. I've never seen 337 pounds look so good the way Evan Neal looks. So he did miss out on that. However, the Houston Texans could use this. He'd be obviously a cornerstone for their offensive line up front. He could play multiple positions along the front, so there's that too that I think that adds to it. And whether it's Davis Mills or a quarterback to be mentioned, depending on what the Houston Texans are looking to do, I don't think it's going to be Deshaun Watson based on how things are going with him right now. But they could use it. Bottom line is, this is arguably the next best player in the draft, and I think you can't go passing up on a guy that's going to help solidify that group, whether it's for Davis Mills in his second year, your run game, or whatever the quarterback they want to bring in.
The Jets have multiple first-round picks. We see their first one at 4. Ryan, you have them taking Kayvon Thibodeau.
Offensive line could be a consideration here, and I've done that in the past. But they have Mekhi Becton. If he gets healthy, he will obviously be anchoring the left side. They have Elijah Vera Tucker, who they drafted last year. So they have some pieces there. So why not make that defense better? The edge rush position was a huge liability. It did have some injuries heading into the season, but knowing Robert Saleh's background and knowing that Kayvon Thibodeau is sitting there, I feel like it would be a mistake on the Jets' part to let him get by. Look, there have been conversations over the last few weeks that maybe Kayvon Thibodeau doesn't love football or the coaching. He won't be willing to take hard coaching to the next level. And I've talked to teams about that, and one scout came back and said, you know what, maybe we're overthinking this, because when you watch him play, he's lights out. Is he Chase Young or is he Myles Garrett? No, but he's not far behind, and when he's fully healthy, he is pretty much unstoppable. So I love the idea of him going to the Jets, playing with Robert Saleh, getting after it on that Jets defense in a pretty tough division, and then the Jets still have another first-round pick to go in a direction that either helps the defense or offense, because they have 2 of the top 10 anyway. So they could go any number of directions here. I'm going Kayvon Thibodeau because I think he's going to be really good. They could obviously focus on offensive line or even wide receiver if they want to get crazy.
The Giants have 2 top 10 picks as well. Ryan, at number 5, you have them selecting Mississippi State offensive tackle Charles Cross. Last week, you did have them taking Neal. You said that would be the best case scenario for them, but Cross is not a bad runner-up.
Not a bad runner-up at all, and he had a fantastic season at Mississippi State. Here's the math you sort of have to do. Mike Leach, air raid, not a lot of running going on, and it takes you back to those Washington State days and Andre Dillard, who was a first-round pick of the Eagles, and he has struggled, to put it frankly, in the NFL. His pass blocking has been fine. His run blocking hasn't quite come along. But the good news with Charles Cross is he's incredibly athletic. He's pretty big for a left tackle who does more than just pass block. He can get after as a run blocker as well, and he did that before Mike Leach arrived. So you have to feel good about that if you're drafting him top 5 or top 6. I think he's right there in the mix with these other 2 offensive linemen we're talking about. He's 1C, if you will, and he's been solid as a pass protector, but he's actually been better as a run blocker at times, and that has to be encouraging for Daniel Jones and the rest of that new regime in New York. And if you're keeping Daniel Jones around, you might as well protect him, and Charles Cross feels like a pretty easy pick here if Evan Neal and Ike Ekwonu are already off the board.
Let's go to the Panthers at 6. Brady, this is where we find a guy from your alma mater, Kyle Hamilton, safety. They do need O-line help. They could use a quarterback. So how do you feel about Hamilton here?
I think it makes a lot of sense. Look, to me, as far as a prospect, he's one of the top overall prospects. Maybe say top 3, something like that. I mean, his film is absolutely phenomenal. I think that was one of the hard things going into the Combine was there was nothing he was going to be able to do at the Combine that was going to overshadow what you saw him do on tape. He had a phenomenal year for the games in which he's played really throughout his career at Notre Dame. And the biggest thing that stands out is his versatility. He's such a hybrid player. You see him down here playing in the box. You saw him play in the half field before. He could play the deep post and really roam sideline to sideline. He's a good blitzer. He's a great tackler in open space. And oh, by the way, he can match up and play man-to-man with the best of them. So the reality is he's a player who you can build your entire defense around because of his skill set. And that's something that I think when you think about him next to Jeremy Chin in that secondary, it's going to be tantalizing for Matt Rule. Not that he necessarily needs to improve that defense, but pairing those 2 together could be a dangerous combination. The only thing that stands in this way is the potential of one of those offensive linemen dropping to them at this spot, like you had mentioned there, Amanda, whether it's Cross or Neal or Ekwonu, which, again, I don't think either of those 3 are going to be there at this point in time. But this makes a lot of sense for a variety of reasons.
And if they were there, it would be very hard to pass up on any of them. Let's go to 7. We find the Giants again. Brady Ryan has them taking Florida State edge rusher Jermaine Johnson. You got to talk to him at Indy. He had a really good workout.
He had a tremendous workout. He had a phenomenal year for Florida State. I mean, really was one of those players that took advantage of the opportunity in transferring to Tallahassee. You saw what he was capable of doing. I mean, it's crazy to think about all the talent that Georgia had, and you're like, oh yeah, this Jermaine Johnson guy, he was supposed to be in Athens as well, playing for the Bulldogs, but he ends up being a Seminole, and he made the most of it, and he was an incredible, well-rounded young man. I think he's probably done more for himself than any other player in this draft with the way he played this past season, the way he tested, and I think the way he interviewed as well. That was one of the things you heard from people who talked to him, whether that's guys who were around him at the Senior Bowl or even at the Combine. They came away really impressed with his maturity, his tenacity for the game of football, which you can tell on tape and when you talk to him. But overall, just this kind of calm, level-headed demeanor and talk about just wanting to be a great teammate, serve other people. I love this guy. I think he's going to have a heck of a career based on what he's been able to do the past 12 months.
Level-headed, but maybe with a chip on his shoulder, said he felt like he had something to prove going to the ACC from the SEC. All right, let's go to the Falcons at 8. Ryan, you are not changing your mind here, sticking with Liberty's Malik Willis as the first quarterback off the board. Brady, this has been a lot of talk at HQ because Ryan's keeping him here. What do you think about it?
Well, Ryan was hearing a lot of the rumors and talk during the course of the combine. He had a number of shrimp cocktails while I was there with him, so I'm sure that might have persuaded Ryan to be looking at Malik Willis as the top guy. But here's the reality. Everyone talks about upside in the draft. That's what this is. Malik Willis has the most upside of any quarterback in this draft class. We saw the big arm on display while throwing. We've seen the athleticism. Now, he didn't test the 40, but I think if he did, he'd probably go somewhere around the 4.6 or sub 4.6 range. Well, hell, I guess if we're talking about this year's combine, he should have ran. He might have ran a 4.3 with the way that clock was working. But the truth of the matter is, there's still some development to go. This offense is not as conducive to NFL style of play, and I think that's your only concern here is if you draft him here to Atlanta, it's great. He sits behind Matt Ryan, he learns the game, he then slides in a year later. If you have to put him in right away, and to be honest with you, if a team does draft him and they don't have a veteran like Matt Ryan, make him the guy from day one, give him as many reps as possible to get him acclimated to an NFL system, and then see what you have in him and understand you're going to go through some growing pains because he's still a young player. But I see why you did this, Ryan. I do think he's the guy with the most upside at the quarterback position in this draft class.
So that's what we're calling shrimp cocktails. Yeah, I had a lot of something in India. Maybe that's where I got the information from. But, I think it's interesting, Amanda, that Brady said last week on the podcast that he thinks you throw those quarterbacks in the right away, depending on the situation, because Malik Willis does need to sit, and that's why I had him going to Atlanta, because Matt Ryan's playing next year. And if that's the case, certainly Malik Willis would benefit from being on the bench. And I actually asked him that when we had him on set, whether he thought he might want to sit for a year behind a veteran or play. And obviously he said, I want to play right away. The thing is, and this is what I always say about Malik Willis, if there's a 25% chance you're getting something close to Josh Allen, 75-80% of Josh Allen, then you have to take him in round one, and whatever happens, happens. We just don't know if he's even going to be 25% of that because he has so much athleticism and just the lack of, he's very raw, so the lack of things that you like to see every day from your NFL quarterback haven't quite showed up consistently. But again, that's why the draft is a crapshoot. You have no idea how it's going to work out, and it's hard to pass on those physical tools when you see them on display, even though he struggled a lot last year at Liberty, for being honest, but you have to sort of project what that's going to look like at the next level, and much the same way the Bills were able to do with Josh Allen after struggling at times at Wyoming.
We get a little deja vu with the Broncos at 9. Ryan has them doubling down on the cornerback position. Last year taking Patrick Surtain the second in this exact same position. This year doubling down with Cincy's Ahmad Gardner. Yeah,
and I love this because I do think he put himself in the position to be the first cornerback taken. You look at the size at 6'3", running a 4.4 40. That's the type of combination of skills that you really want to see matched with the tape that he showcased. Now, he never even gave up a touchdown during his entire career in college. That's how good this young man is. I do think he's the best cornerback in this draft class if you're not going to get the 2019 version of Derek Stingley Jr. There's a variety of skills that Sauce Gardner showcased this year, whether it's lockdown coverage and man-to-man, blitzing off the short edge, playing off in zone coverage, being able to read the quarterback's eyes, and having the ball skills and the ability to be able to make the big play, make the turnover when it's there for him. So he's the entire package at the cornerback position. I think if you had any questions about him, all right, look at the competition he played against. But the truth of the matter is, in college football, it's so deep with talented, fast wide receivers. I don't doubt that at all. This young man has showed out every opportunity he's gotten. I think he's going to be a tremendous addition to this Broncos roster if this scenario plays out across from Pat Surtain. It's tough for any quarterback going up against them in the Mile High City.
We finish up with the Jets at 10, their second top 10 pick. Ryan has them taking Utah linebacker Devin Lloyd. I texted Ryan. I said, Ryan, who's your favorite linebacker? He's like, Devin Lloyd right here, Kobe Dean right there. So what do you think about Devin Lloyd first?
I'm with Ryan, and I feel bad because both of them, you can't go wrong. I mean, both these are tremendous young men. They're extremely talented when you watch the tape. I think you tend to give Devin Lloyd a little bit more credit because of what was in front of Nakobe Dean, and you say, all right, Devin Lloyd did a variety of things. He did everything extremely well. Whether he's a blitzer, getting to the opposing quarterbacks, dropping back into coverage, stopping the run, he's a sound tackler. He does it all. And he's in a scheme that I think is going to fit the NFL scheme extremely well. And you can make the same case for Nakobe Dean, but the only thing for Devin Lloyd is his combine performance wasn't exactly what I think a lot of people were hoping for out of him. At least on tape, he showed a little bit more athleticism as far as the sideline speed, which we didn't see him look quite as smooth in the drills. But again, that isn't football, and so I don't know how many people are going to ding him for that. I think they look at the tape. They probably feel comfortable about how they feel about him.
That is 1 through 10. Coming up, we'll take a look at 11 through 20, including Garrett Wilson. I will tell you that he is the first wide receiver off the board. Ryan saying he reminds him Welcome back. Mock Draft Monday. Our draft expert, Ryan Wilson's very first since the Combine. And I will tell you in this particular section what he saw at the Combine sort of influencing him. We'll get to that in a second. But you do have Garrett Wilson as the first wideout to go in the first round. Heading to the Commanders, we'll see if Brady thinks maybe they should take a quarterback instead. Let's welcome back Ryan Wilson and Brady Quinn. Brady, we have not seen an Ohio State wide receiver go in the first round since 2007. Ryan has that changing. We could see a couple, though, starting with Garrett Wilson to the Commanders at 11. I'm still not used to saying that.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting tandem, right? You got Terry McLaurin, one Ohio State wide receiver on one side, and then you've got Garrett Wilson on the other. Only problem is, Ryan, who's throwing to him? I mean, are you signing back Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's an unrestricted free agent? Is it Taylor Heineke? Are you signing Mitchell Trubisky? Are you looking in the draft later on? Or are you working out a trade? That's the biggest problem with this one. Now, Wilson ended up being the faster of the two Ohio State wide receivers, which would be shocking considering, again, how the 40 times worked out there in Indianapolis. But the reality is, to me, he was the wide receiver that separated himself between him and Olave this year for the Buckeyes. He's the big play wide receiver. There's really nothing that you're looking at trying to improve upon. Plays bigger than his size. He's got a burst to him. I think the only knock on him is he drops some of the easy ones. You know, he'll drop one that's like literally thrown right in his numbers or an easy pass that he should catch. You'll see it every once in a while. But outside of that, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and you can wait for Jackson Smith and Jigba next season. But those two wide receivers were phenomenal. It was a tremendous group. And you saw the productivity over the course of Garrett Wilson's career. So I love it for the Washington Commanders. I just don't know who's throwing them passes. Yeah.
That's a good question. We'll see as the season goes along. Maybe Ryan will change that in his next mock draft, number 28, I believe. All right, let's go to the Vikings at 12. Ryan, this is someone we did not see work out at the Combine. We only saw him 3 times last season. He is still nursing a foot injury. Derek Stingley Jr. going to the Vikings. What is your faith in him right now?
Oh, I have a lot of faith in him, but Brady talked about it earlier. You're hoping, fingers crossed, that his 2019 version of Derek Stingley Jr., because they only played 3 games last year before the foot injury, which is a Lisfranc injury, and that perhaps gives you some pause for concern, or cause for concern too, as I make up phrases here. But here, we talked to him at the Combine, and again, these kids were so incredibly modest coming from these big programs. And I didn't talk to him so much about the 2021 season because there wasn't a lot to talk about it. But I did talk to him about the 2019 season in terms of the practices, because the practices probably made him better than the actual games. He was going up against Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Race McMath, Terrace Marshall, all those guys that are now playing in the NFL. And he was one of the best players on that team. And he was probably arguably the best defender on that team, which had a bunch of first and second round picks on it. So you're hoping you get that guy. He has the NFL pedigree, obviously. He's a smart, quiet kid, and he sort of does his talking with his play, but he has to get back to the form that we saw in 2019, because there are going to be questions about 2020 and 2021, and that's part of the reason that Sauce Gardner's where he is, and why some other cornerbacks may actually be in the mix to be the second cornerback off the board should Stingley not go this high. I think the Vikings need help at cornerback. Pat Pete is a free agent. Jeff Gladney, the first-round pick a few years ago, didn't work out, so they need help there on the back end, even though Mike Zimmer, the defensive guy, has moved on to, I don't know if greener pastures, but he's moved on to pastures. He's got a ranch out west somewhere.
He's out to pasture. That's basically what Ryan has said. Ryan put him out to pasture.
Ryan gets funnier as the mock drafts go along. Speaking of Ryan, because your opinion is weighing heavily into this next one, we go to the Browns at 13. Now, Ryan admits this may be a little overreaction. It has been about 3 to 4 weeks since Jordan Davis has been in the top 32. He said, is this an overreaction to Davis's out of this galaxy performance at the Combine? Hell and yes.
Yeah, I'm with you. In fact, I'm going to ask you this question, Ryan. Why is he not higher? How is there not a team that doesn't take him in the first 12 picks at this point based on what he did? I mean, he's a massive human being, and the one question teams had about him was his weight, and he dropped weight for the Combine, and he looked like a dancing bear out there. I've never seen a guy that massive run as that smooth and easily, and even in the drills, he moved like a linebacker. And you kind of almost forget on TV and have no appreciation for how large of a human being he is. He was impactful on film. We saw that. I think this would be a huge addition to the Cleveland Browns up front. If you had him and his ability to penetrate and just get his arms up in the way of opposing quarterbacks, you got Myles Garrett coming off the edge. It's just a dangerous combination. And I think they've been looking for ways of helping to stop the run in Cleveland, this would be that. You get this massive human being. So my only question is he there at 13 for the Cleveland Browns, or does someone take him earlier because of the tape and because of what we witnessed at the Combine?
You know, Brady, I asked you probably a month and a half, 2 months ago, because you liked him then, and I liked him as a two-down guy. I had the questions, and I compared him to Dexter Lawrence. He's better than Dexter Lawrence, and Dexter Lawrence went in the middle of the first round a few years ago to the Giants, and he was on set, and you won't believe this, but he dwarfed me as he sat next to me. I looked like I was the ventriloquist dummy on his lap, and I was just saying whatever he needed me to say. I mean, the guy is enormous, but to run a 4.78 and to do a 10.5-foot long jump, you can't even do the math on how that works out in terms of physics. So credit to him, and he gave all the credit to his teammates on that defense as they won that national title. They were all those guys that came through were incredibly humble, but I think he impressed more than anyone at the Combine, and he ran a faster 40 time than 4 tight ends. That tells you all you need to know about this man's athleticism in a straight line, and all you have to do is watch him play to see how interior defensive offensive linemen feel about trying to get in front of him, because it never seemed to work out over the course of the 2021 season.
I don't know if he has hands, but he might be a candidate for those goal line packages where you put in those like additional big guys to catch the football out of the backfield or as a tight end. I mean, Jordan Davis falls in that category now, at least from what I witnessed. So.
I think what's been so much fun is just watching Ryan watch other players at the Combine. That is a show in itself there. Let's go to the Ravens 14. Ryan has them selecting Trayvon Walker, also out of Georgia, can line up a couple places. Yeah,
he's extremely versatile, and then what we saw over the course of the Combine is just how his athleticism for his size, not quite as massive as Jordan Davis, but still weighed into 270 plus and is running somewhere at sub 4.6 is just an incredible athlete for as long and as strong as he is. So again, you're matching the film with what we saw at the Combine from him, and you've got to love everything you see. I think this is another player that falls in that category, Jermaine Johnson, where he just got better and better and better and has been rising up draft boards since the beginning of this season with what he put on tape and what he did now at the Combine. So I wouldn't be shocked, again, if he doesn't potentially go even a little bit higher, only because of the dire need for edge rushers and guys who are impactful. Walker fits that category, especially for the Baltimore Ravens and what I think they're looking for within their defensive scheme.
The Eagles have back-to-back picks at 15 and 16. Both of you talked about how much you like Devin Lloyd, just a little bit over Nakobe Dean, but this is where you find Nakobe Dean at 15.
Well, I asked Nakobe Dean because Ryan was up there with us, and I was trying to get Nakobe to look at Ryan and to see if he felt comfortable with being in that spot. He really didn't say anything to us, did he, Ryan?
No, but I tell you did. Breece Hall, thanks to Jamie Eisenberg, I have him as my number 2 running back. I was pretty sure Breece Hall was about to punch me in the face after Jamie brought that up. So thank you, Jamie, for that. And then back at the Super Bowl, our guy Chris Hassel mentioned to Kayvon Thibodeau that had him going 4th overall. Kayvon Thibodeau wasn't crazy about that either. So, hazards of the job. Luckily, I make millions of dollars, so I would be quite okay should I be, maimed for the rest of my life, can no longer do draft coverage.
I was going to say, everyone's trying to get Ryan punched in the face.
Well, Ryan is so nice. Why are they so mean to you, Ryan?
I don't know why. I really don't know why. But in regards to the
not Will, not Pete, not you, Ryan. This is who we're picking on.
That's what happens. The nice guy gets picked on. In regards to Nakobe Dean, though, again, you could make him interchangeable with Devin Lloyd and how you kind of see him fitting in. He's not quite as big as Roquan Smith, but that's what he reminds me of. He's incredibly intelligent. He's a chemical engineer. Ryan talked to him a little bit when we were sitting on set with him, but you can see it just from the way he diagnoses and how fast he is to react to what the offense is trying to do. He's, to me, the perfect size and fit for this league now and what you're asking for an off-the-ball inside linebacker. And so it makes a lot of sense for the Eagles. I think they need to upgrade their defense. This will be one way of doing so. He finds his way to the quarterback when he's in one-on-one pass rush situations. He's good dropping in coverage. He has that sideline-to-sideline ability. So he is the entire package. I think the only thing you might say is he's a little undersized compared to what these guys used to be, but that's the normal linebacker size nowadays.
Eagles have 3 first-round picks, so that's the first one. Let's go to the second one at 16 there. Ryan has them selecting Michigan's David Ojabo. He says, look, he's not a finished product. He came to the States in 2015, but says, look, that's what makes him exciting. This dude's just getting started.
He may have been the best of this entire group. Another highly intelligent young man. You see the length, you see the burst off of the football. I think he's actually a little bit bendier, too, than Aiden Hutchinson is. That's something you saw throughout tape during the course of the season. But, again, going back to your initial comments, Amanda, he hasn't played that much football yet. So Philly, and they want to do this with players. They did that with a tackle as a former rugby player. So they have no problem taking a guy here in David Ojabo who hasn't played a ton of football and then watching him grow and progress. I think if you can get Nakobe Dean at 15 and stack him with David Ojabo, you've given your defense a ton of help now and taking some pressure off Jalen Hurts in that offense.
Good defensive picks. We'll see what they do with their third one there. Let's go to the Chargers, though, at 17. Ryan, you're getting Justin Herbert some protection in Kenyon Green.
I love Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M. He can play outside, but his future's probably going to be inside, and he plays with an edge and an attitude, and he's a big, thick guy who can move people off the ball and does pretty well in pass protection, too. So all the things that you want when you're trying to protect Justin Herbert. Now, look, he ran a 5.24 40. If you care about fat guys running in a straight line, I really don't. But he did have 20 in the bench press, and that does get your attention. He plays much stronger than that, and I don't really have any long-term concerns about what that means. I'm more impressed with how he played at Texas A&M, especially once he got inside. You see him pancaking guys here, and I think he comes in right away and helps that offensive line that's going to be in flux because they lose some guys in free agency, and was in flux last year on the edges. Obviously, Rashawn Slater played well, but the other side, on the right side, there were some concerns, and they'll lose some guys on the interior, and I think a guy like Kenyon Green can come in right away, start, and be really effective.
Ryan, last week it was pretty exciting. You had the Saints taking Kenny Pickett at 18. We still only have Malik Willis as the only quarterback off the board so far. This week, you are not going with a quarterback. You are going with a wide receiver in Drake London to the Saints.
Yeah, man, I feel like Jameis Winston might be destined to return to New Orleans. And if that's the case, then they probably won't take a quarterback there. And you might be interested in trying to find a wide receiver because we don't know what Michael Thomas's plans are going to be. And Drake London, for me, is an absolutely phenomenal talent. Now, the issues are, can he outrun people down the field? And if you watch him, he clearly can, but we have to talk about things, so that's one of the talking points. Or is it just that he's a high-point catch machine? He's also that. You know, he played along with Michael Pittman and Amon-Ra St. Brown at USC, and he's built like Michael Pittman. I think he's going to be better than Michael Pittman at the next level, and that should tell you something because Pittman was a second-round pick who came in right away, contributed for Indianapolis. I love Drake London's game. He plays with a lot of confidence, and he plays football like he's playing basketball. He is just destroying guys above the rim there, so to speak. But he also outruns guys, so I don't get the talking points so that he's not creating separation down the field because every time I saw him, he was running away from guys. So I love him here. He may end up going higher, and there could be a conversation that he might be wide receiver one in that same group with Garrett Wilson and a healthy Jameson Williams, who's currently recovering from that ACL surgery.
Thank you so much for bringing up Jameson Williams. I appreciate that. It's almost like you knew what was coming in this draft, Ryan Wilson. Let's go to the
Eagles. His draft, he should.
I know. That was my joke. At 19, their third pick, you are going with Jameson Williams. As you mentioned, look, he's still dealing with that knee injury. We didn't see him work out at the Combine still. There's been no concern for you so far regarding him in the first round, and we find him here.
No, and I tell you all the time, I talked to three teams after the injury, and all three teams said he's a first-round pick. Maybe he moves down a little bit and falls from top 15 to the bottom half of the first round. But, you know, me and Brady and DK were talking about him during the season about how you couldn't catch him. And the fact that he had to transfer from Ohio State is pretty funny to go to Alabama to get playing time. But he took full advantage of it. You could say he's sleight of frame, but some guy named Devonta Smith was sleight of frame last year and ended up having a pretty good rookie season after winning the Heisman and up in Philadelphia. I love Jameson Williams' game. He's faster than Devonta Smith down the field. He's a little quicker off the line of scrimmage, and he does all the things you want NFL wide receivers to do. Unfortunately, he had to play on turf in that championship game and blew out his ACL. But I think at the next level, he'll be fine, even if you don't get him on the field until mid to late October or early November.
It's a shame, too. I do believe he would have been wide receiver one in this group. Had he come off a healthy season, given what he showcased this past year, he would have at least been my wide receiver one. He was absolutely dynamic, outstanding. It truly is a shame, but it's good to see at least there's a consensus that he'll still be a first-round pick after that injury.
Absolutely. Let's go to the Steelers at 20. Ryan, we see another quarterback finally. Kenny Pickett going to the Steelers at 20. Brady, this is somebody that you loved going to the Steelers earlier on. I texted you today. I said, you still like Kenny Pickett to Steelers? You said, sure. I need to know where that level of sure is right now.
Well, it depends if the Steelers are going to be the sweepstakes for Aaron Rodgers, because if that happens first, then I'm drafting Kenny Pickett here. So it's something to keep in mind to see what the Steelers do. Looking for a potential trade of a veteran quarterback who's under contract, potentially the free agent market, which is all going to happen before the draft. So there's a couple things to keep monitoring as we move along here. But obviously Aaron Rodgers is going to make a decision soon. And if it's not Pittsburgh, that opens them up, obviously, to take a guy like Kenny Pickett, who they should know very well. He plays there at Heinz Field at the University of Pitt. He was one of the most prolific, if not the most prolific passer in college football this year. And I think he's the QB1 to me of this class. He puts on the best tape where you see him with the downfield accuracy, a sense for really in the zone concepts, where that football needs to go, timing, anticipation, and the ability to extend plays and make big plays down the field. All the things that you have to do at the next level, Kenny Pickett does it. Now the knock, the small hands. Guess what? He wears 2 gloves, and last time I checked, he wore those 2 gloves at the combine for throwing, and he looked just fine to me. Shouldn't be an issue, even though everyone wants to make a big deal about it.
We'll see if it's an issue, as you pointed out multiple times, in bad weather. But as of right now, let's put the hands, the small hands, to rest there. All right. We finally have 2 quarterbacks off the board, but not the guy, Ryan, up until this point, has had and his QB1 in Matt Corral. And I'll tell you what, we're going to talk about him next. He does have him going to a team, but it is Mock Draft Monday here on CBS Sports HQ. Our guys are back from the Combine, and Ryan Wilson, he's going to tell us in a second because I really don't know if this is 27th or 28th mock draft. Either way, it is his first one since the Combine, and things are getting interesting here. Looking at what we got coming up, let's bring it back to Ryan Wilson and Brady Quinn. We're going to get to Matt Corral here in a second, but let's start with the Patriots at 21. Ryan, you have them selecting Washington cornerback Trent McDuffie. You got to talk to him at the Combine.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, his teammate Kyler Gordon and Trent McDuffie, 2 of the handsomest defensive backs you'll ever see. So that was fun for me. But in terms of football, also incredibly good. J.C. Jackson appears to be headed elsewhere for the Patriots on a big money deal and a well-earned deal. Trent McDuffie is incredibly smart. He was the brains of that secondary for Washington for several years. He played mostly outside, but he said, look, I can play anywhere. I've been telling teams this week that I can do that. And the tackling ability, he's one of the best tacklers in this draft at any position. His coverage ability, he moves so well in space, coming downhill or laterally, and the brains make him feel like a natural fit in New England. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's sitting there, that the Patriots try to make a move for him because they need help in the secondary.
Let's go to the Raiders at 22. Ryan has them taking Minnesota edge rusher Boye Mafe, who has never been in his top 32 before. I had to text him. I was like, I haven't seen this name, Ryan. Here you go. But he really impressed him at the Senior Bowl and the Combine. What do you think about him here? He's
been a big-time riser this year for the University of Minnesota. And then you saw him at the Senior Bowl. That's where he flashed. People said, okay, even versus the best of them, he's going to be able to win a lot of these. And at the Combine, he didn't. He definitely impressed. He went out there, he ran fast, he looked athletic, he looked smooth. He's bigger than I think most people give him credit to when you meet him in person. The biggest question becomes the fit here for the Raiders. You've got Max Crosby on one side, Yannick Ngakoue on the other. Both the interior players for the Raiders will be free agents. So maybe they looked at that particular spot here. But sometimes you see teams draft to try to get as many, good edge rushers on a team as possible, and especially considering Yannick Ngakoue's age. So maybe that makes some sense here.
Let's go to the Cardinals at 23. Ryan has them taking Georgia defensive lineman Devontae Wyatt. Ryan, this is someone else you were really impressed with at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, he's 315. He ran a 4.74, the fastest among defensive tackles. 8 100ths of a second faster than his buddy Jordan Davis. And he is incredibly quick off the snap. We saw that at the Senior Bowl. We saw that in the course of the season as he got better as that year went on for Georgia in that defense. And I think as sort of like in the Boye Mafe conversation, he is only beginning to impress people who aren't familiar with his work. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up going a little higher than this. It might be an all-Georgia draft, it feels like at one point, with all those defenders on that team that did so much for that national championship run. But the Cardinals need help defensively. They actually need some help on the offensive line and wide receiver. They go any number of directions here. But I have him going with Wyatt just based on how well he's done in the pre-draft process.
And we're going to start seeing a couple more of those guys sneak into the end of the first round here that have really impressed you. But the Cowboys at 24, this is a name we've heard quite a bit in your first round, taking Iowa's Tyler Lindenbaum. And you say, look, if he's here, this is a slam dunk for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I love his game. And at points during the fall, I had him going top 10. A center typically doesn't go that high. You have to go back quite a while to find that to be the case. But he is solid start to finish. He's a wrestler, which makes sense if you're going to Iowa. He wrestled Tristan Wirfs twice in high school, and they split their matches, which gives you some idea of his strength and speed and quickness, and that shows up on tape as well. He will certainly jump into that Cowboys lineup right away and start, whether that's at center or maybe even on the interior guard. But again, if he's here this late in the draft process, something has gone wrong ahead of him where there's been a run on edge rushers or wide receivers or even quarterbacks. But I think the Cowboys would love to have a player like this fall to them and put him right into the lineup immediately.
After the Cowboys, we find the Bills at 25. Ryan, you're going with Michigan's Daxton Hill. This is another guy who's listed as safety, but he can line up elsewhere. Why do you like him here to the Bills?
His versatility, and look, here's the thing. The Bills don't need a whole bunch. Maybe offensive line could be an issue here. We know Cole Beasley's requested to be traded, so perhaps wide receiver. But Dax Hill is so good in what he does. He plays primarily slot, but he can play deep. He can play in the box, and he told us at the Combine that I'll line up anywhere. I'll play cornerback if you need me to, and the versatility with which the Bills play defense, especially in the back end, moving him around as a chess piece with Poyer, for example, and their other safeties, it just seems to make sense as the Bills continue to build on what they have and try to get to a Super Bowl.
Ryan, you've done about 1,000 of these mock drafts so far. I think it's 27, maybe 28. I'm not sure. You have never had the Titans taking a quarterback before in any of them. That is changing this week. You have them going with Matt Corral. Explain all of this.
Look, they need offensive line help, and there's no two ways about it. And look, they appear to like Ryan Tannehill fine, and he's been mostly good in Tennessee, certainly better than what he was in Miami. They have the running back situation taken care of. They do have wide receivers who can certainly make plays for them. But if if the offensive linemen they want are no longer available, and they don't want to reach for one, whether it's a Daniel Faalele or Bernard Raymond or Trevor Penning, why not take a quarterback? And I told you, Amanda, Matt Corral is my QB1, and he has been throughout the duration. I love the way he plays. I know the funkiness, if you will, of that Ole Miss offense and trying to translate that to the next level. I know Matt Corral takes a ton of hits, and he has to get better at that. But I think if you have a quarterback in the waiting, have Tannehill for one more year, and then perhaps move on from him, at least you have a backup plan. Because there had to be some frustrations toward the end of the year with how Tannehill was playing, especially in that playoff loss to the Bengals where he threw some head-scratching interceptions towards the end of that game.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. There's some frustration there. I think it's one of the reasons why it's rumored that, maybe this is a destination for Aaron Rodgers. So this team falls into another category, much like the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hey, they're one of three teams that Rodgers is looking at if it's not the Packers. So you have to wait and see his decision then. Then after that, you maybe have a guy like Russell Wilson you're looking at if he wants to get out from the Seattle Seahawks and if they'd be willing to. So there's going to be some potential moves made this offseason by veteran quarterbacks who are under contract. So we have to figure out how that plays itself out first. Then I think you start looking into the draft. If they go with Corral, the interesting thing is not that he's a comp to Marcus Mariota, but it's kind of the situation that he reminds me of. Mariota came from more of a college-style system, up-tempo spread offense that never really translated to the NFL level, and he had a harder time, especially after his rookie year, really assimilating to the NFL. I worry about that for Matt Corral, but he would have a year to be able to sit and watch and wait behind a guy like Ryan Tannehill to learn from him and grow within an NFL system. So that's where I think there's some hope here, and that's where it makes some sense.
Okay. I was going to ask you if there's anybody else that you like there, but would it just be Matt Corral if there was a quarterback there?
Well, if there's a quarterback, Sam Howell's the other guy that I really like. I actually like him better than Matt Corral in this instance. I think people are sleeping on him right now when you look at his skill set, his toughness, some things he did this season really carrying his team. So I think that would be the other quarterback in the conversation at the spot.
Okay, we are nearing the end of our draft. There are still some talented wide receivers on the board, including Treylon Burks. We have made it to the end of Ryan Wilson's 1,000th mock draft here on a Mock Draft Monday, but this is his first. Since he was at the Combine, he got to look at all these guys, well, some of them, interview some of them, and it's making a little bit of a difference when it comes to his latest mock draft. Let's find out what happens 27 through 32. Welcome back, Ryan Wilson and Brady Quinn. Let's start with the Bucs at 27. Ryan, are going with Zion Johnson, and this is somebody you were impressed with at the Combine.
At the Combine, at the Senior Bowl, through the course of his season at Boston College, he played left guard. This season, he played left tackle the year before, and he's slightly undersized for playing outside for sure. But inside, he's an absolute terror. And he took some snaps at center at Senior Bowl and impressed there. He led the way in bench press among the offensive linemen at 32. And it all just adds up. Ali Marpet just retired. Obviously, the Buccaneers have needs at quarterback, but it sounds like they may try to stay in-house. And if you're looking to protect whoever the quarterback ends up being, Zion Johnson, you could do worse than that. I love everything about his game. He may end up going sooner than this, and you can see him here in the one-on-one drills, which are geared towards the defensive lineman winning. He more than held his own and was extremely impressive, also in the team drills, also in the game. I love Zion Johnson, and I love him as a first-round pick.
Love that. Let's see if you love Andrew Booth Jr. to the Packers at 28. I mean, you picked him there. Last week you had him going 22 to the Raiders, so why 28 to the Packers?
He's just a victim of everyone else getting pushed up. He has done nothing to change his draft stock. He had a great season. The lack of experience was the only thing against him, and he played really well this year. We talked to Darian Kendrick at the Combine, who played with him in 2020, and talked about how many the leaps and bounds he made in terms of getting better in his game in 2020, and you saw that consistently in 2021. He's extremely fluid. We saw him tackle right there. He gets after it, and I think the Packers have a ton of needs. They're not going to draft a wide receiver. We know that under any circumstances. So why not fix that defense that had some holes in the secondary, even though they got Eric Stokes last year in round 1 and are almost certainly going to bring back Jay Alexander.
Dolphins' new head coach, 29. You have them taking Trevor Penning. You said, look, as this pre-draft process goes along, as I mentioned, getting toward the end of the draft, we're seeing some of these guys here that you like a little bit more and more.
Yeah, and look, the Dolphins have drafted offensive linemen. It feels like 3 or 4 every draft the last few years, and they've yet to sort of hit on the guys they want. So if you're rolling with Tua, if that's the plan going forward, and that's the plan that Mike McDaniel laid out when he was introduced as coach, keep drafting the offensive linemen. And Trevor Penning I talked about the edge that some of these guys had when we spoke with him. No one was edgier than Trevor Penning. I asked him about body slamming all those defensive linemen in the one-on-one drills at the Senior Bowl, and he said, yeah, the coaches and staff had to ask me several times to quit doing that. And that tells you he's playing to prove a point, and that's why he was doing those things. And not only can he body slam guys, he's really good as a pass protector and certainly in the run game. And look, FCS guy doesn't play like it. He plays every bit like he belonged to the Senior Bowl and certainly the Combine. And I think if he's a first or second round talent whenever he goes, you can pencil him in right away, and he's going to be effective.
Let me make a request for Trevor Penning to stop doing it, because one time he almost tore Desmond Ritter's knee up, and another 2 times I saw him do it, they're both holding. So for the sake of the Miami Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa, yeah, let's not do that again, Trevor Penning. It thought it looked cool, but it actually would be a penalty in the NFL, and you'd be putting your quarterback who's already dealt with an injury history on the bench. So let's hold off from doing that.
Brady, let's go to the Chiefs at 30. We see another Ohio State wide receiver in Chris Olave. You say thumbs up, like the speed, but also what about the defense here?
Well, I guess the objective here is just kill everyone with as many points as humanly possible, all right? I mean, you didn't have enough speed in Travis Kelce matched with obviously Tyreek Hill and then Mecole Hardman. Let's just add another, sub 4.4 guy to the mix here in Chris Olave, who honestly is probably as refined of a wide receiver as any of the names I just mentioned, obviously excluding the tight end and Kelce, but he'd be a great addition to any team. He's a precise route runner. He has tremendous hands. I can't recall a time he dropped a pass over the course of his career, in particular in the red zone. He's not blessed with that much size, but he does everything you ask him to do. He blocks outside on the perimeter. He can take fly sweeps and run and play tough with the football. He is the complete package at wide receiver, and I do think whether it's the Chiefs or anyone else in the first round who gets him, he will be there and he'll be productive for a long time to come.
Let's go to the Bengals at 31, and this is a name we're seeing more and more in your top 32, Ryan. Daniel Fa'alele. I have texted you multiple times, making sure I am saying his name correctly. Thank you. I'm really working on it. Why do you like him here to the Bengals?
Did you see the Super Bowl, Amanda? That's why I like him here at the Bengals. Poor Joe Burrow barely got out of there. I think he left on a golf cart on his way back to the team bus. And you have to protect him. That's the bottom line. Look, no one's going to argue that you shouldn't have taken Jamar Chase with that 5th overall pick last year. That was the perfect pick. But the offensive line is still a concern. Fa'alele is 387 at the Senior Bowl. I'm not sure what he weighed into the Combine, even if he was lighter than that. He moves much, much faster than someone of that weight. Of course, you take 387, he's not moving at all. But he's incredibly quick-footed, if you will, for someone of that size, or even someone who weighed 315. And I think he's a guy who, depending on who you talk to, some teams like him in the first round, and some teams are like, well, he might be a 3rd-round pick because of the inconsistencies. But he hasn't played football very long. He got a ton better last year after taking off the 2020 season because of COVID. And I think that the sky's the limit, so to speak, and especially on a team that needs desperately offensive line help to protect their franchise quarterback.
He's 6'8". I mean, my concern with a guy that big, that tall, would just be hit him in the back of the helmet. I mean, Joe Burrow's maybe 6'3"? I mean, he's a massive human being playing tackle. You guys act like you can see. You can't, even at 6'3", 6'4", it's hard to see over those big guys in front of you. So that'd be the biggest problem. They're just trying to look to the right side. The guy's blocking your view. You got to find throwing lanes because of how massive this guy is. But I loved watching the tape. It's fun to watch a guy that big move the way he does. It's obviously kind of fun just to see him try to get in a 3-point stance because he's so tall. He's just a huge human being. But they need help on the offensive line, no doubt about it.
6-8 will do it. Let's go to the Lions at 32 via the Rams. And I asked Ryan what was his favorite pick, 27 through 32. And he said this was it, Treylon Burks at the very end.
It's interesting because he doesn't have the Lions taking a quarterback here. And I know he's mocked that up before, and I thought, maybe depending on who you're looking at, are they satisfied with Jared Goff? Maybe not. But if they do go this route, look, obviously they need help and they need upgrades on a lot of positions. Treylon Burks is probably the best value here as far as looking at what he's capable of as a playmaker on the outside. He's big, he's physical, you put him in the backfield like Cordero Patterson or get him the football on a fly sweep. In the short intermediate passing game, he'll get yards after the catch, and he can still make big plays downfield. Now, what we witnessed, though, was he doesn't have the same type of top-end speed that I think the other wide receivers in this class do, and to me, that showed up on tape. So that wasn't really my expectation for him. He's going to have to make contested catches. He's a 4-5 guy, and at his size, he's not going to run away from many defensive backs, especially those guys' time this year. So I love the value here. You add him next to Amon-Ra St. Brown, you give a little more help to Jared Goff in the passing game.
And that's a good point, Brady. Sam Howell could have been certainly an option here. And part of the math I did was next year's draft class at quarterback, as we sit here more than a year out, could be stacked. And maybe that's also what the Lions are considering. And they didn't seem to be, they felt okay with Jared Goff last year. And at times he played better than probably some of us expected. But I think you're exactly right about Treylon Burks. I love his game. The thing is, if he ran a 4.45, folks in the media, probably myself included, are talking about him as wide receiver 1 because he was in that group of guys with Garrett Wilson and Drake London heading into the combine. Didn't work out for him. Had a bad 3-cone drill as well. But you know what? I compared him to sort of a bigger version of Anquan Bolden. Anquan Bolden ran a 4.72 at the combine. He was okay. So if you get something approaching Anquan Bolden in this pick, even at the bottom of the first round, I think that's great value. And he's a huge target. And if you have a quarterback you can't hit this broadside of a barn, Treylon Burks is the guy you want out there running routes.
Ryan, I've mentioned it like 1,000 times. What number is this? I need to know. I feel like I'm the only one who cares about how many you're doing.
You do care, and I appreciate that, Amanda. And you were right. You said 27. It's been 27.
Wow.
I know,
right.
That's a lot.
Good for you.
That is a lot.
Yeah,
we have
a lot.
ways to go. Ryan Wilson, Brady Quinn, thank you guys so much here on a Mock Draft Monday, going through Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft since the Combine. By the way, Ryan hosted an episode of the Pick Six podcast you were on. I think your mic's been cut, but Brady said that he was fantastic.
He might Wally Pipp Will Brinson.
Oh, we're going to have to see. That's a whole reason to listen, download, and follow. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.